Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Diamonds and Buckets podcast. Another good one today as we look at the men's Olympic basketball tournament.
It's at the ticket for the championship.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And as I said, no NBA, no problem, because we are looking at the Olympic men's basketball tournament today. Bit of a preview for everybody. And I've called in someone to help me, called in the big guns. Joining me is Nick from the Double Clutch podcast. Nick, how you doing?
I'm good, Tim. Thanks for having me on. And I will forever refer to myself as one of the big guns now.
Perfect. I actually asked, unfortunately, I asked Mike to join us as well, but he couldn't. But he might, maybe he'll battle you for that title. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah. So the NBA Finals is finished, and obviously we get the NBA Draft coming up on July 29th. Then the Summer League, of course, but. So Olympic tournaments for me, they're always fun. Summer hoops, get to see sort of the collection of stars come together and battle each other on the international stage, the biggest international stage, I suppose. Maybe, probably bigger than the FIBA World Cup, but I digress. So we'll jump right into it, and we're just going to do a quick review here today, folks, for everybody. And basically, how do we get to this point from the Olympics? Well, essentially, if you're unfamiliar with how teams qualify for the Olympics, the top 7 teams from the FIBA World Cup, based on their region, qualified for the Olympics along with the hosts. That gave us 8 teams. So 2 from the Americas, 2 from Europe, the top team from Africa, Asia, Oceania, and the host nation, of course. So 7 teams qualified from the FIBA World Cup with the host nation to make 8. And then, of course, we had the 4 Olympic qualifying tournaments. So the teams that qualified from the FIBA World Cup are the USA, Australia, Argentina, Nigeria, Iran, France, Spain, and then, of course, the host country of Japan. And then the FIBA, there was 24 teams that competed in the Olympic qualifying tournaments this summer that were supposed to take place last summer, of course, and 4 teams from each of those 4 tournaments, the winners of each of those 4 tournaments qualified to make a total of 12 teams. And the winners of the qualifying tournaments this past summer were Slovenia, Czech Republic, Italy, and Germany. And those tournaments took place all over the world. That gave us our groups. And of course, the teams were broken down into 4 groups of 3. So if we'll look at Group A for here first, I guess. And overall thoughts or general thoughts, Nick, before we get into the teams and the players from each of these groups of this group.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me is I think this should be the easiest group to predict who goes through. USA, obviously, overwhelming favourites. I'm sure we're going to go into the teams in more depth. But France, also just an incredibly talented team with a lot of players in peak age. Really good showing at the FIBA Basketball World Cup. Iran, I think, are going to struggle in this tournament. And the Czech Republic... let's talk about that final shot to qualify versus Canada.
Let's not. Let's just, it's gone from the memory.
And despite Thomas Satoransky's heroics, I'm sure he's going to put on, and Jan Vesely flirted with the NBA, now a top EuroLeague guy. Despite those guys on the roster, again, I just don't think they have the talent. So I think it's an easy France-USA coming through this group. Yeah,
for sure. And that's a good breakdown of the group, and I agree with you on who's coming out. But let's look at the teams a little more in depth, as you said. We'll start with Iran. 3rd appearance at the Olympics, first Olympic men's basketball appearance since 2008. 3-time Asian Cup champions. Finished 23rd at the FIBA World Cup. And notable NBA players: Hamed Haddadi, is a former Grizzly. But like you said, probably just a bit too overmatched in this group in terms of when you look at what else is in the group, for sure.
Yeah, the thing with Iran to look out for is they really lack a true playmaker who can play on this level. And so, I mean, you mentioned Haddadi. He is the daddy on this team.
Yeah.
Everything goes through him offensively. He's the linchpin defensively and protecting the rim. The thing, his weakness in this tournament is going to be speed, where they're in the worst possible matchups probably for him, where you've got the likes of Gobert for France, who is actually taller, longer, and faster.
Yeah.
And obviously then you have the USA guys who we can list them off: Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, super long athletes who aren't going to struggle to finish over Haddadi. So other guys on that team, in terms of scoring, and I'm going to apologize for my ignorant pronunciation of Arabic names, Mohamed Sadat Kabarabi is one of them, and Benam, this is the one I really struggle with, Yafchan Kedordi, I believe is how you pronounce it, but I'm sure I'm wrong. Those are the other guys who are going to put points up. But again, it's probably just not going to add up to enough.
Yeah, for sure. And you touched on the scoring difficulties. Folks, just wanted to mention too, Nick has a tremendous preview as well for the Olympics that he shared with me, and which is fantastic. If it's at Synergy Sports, I put the link in the description if you want to click on it and check it out. Also put the link into Nick's podcast, the Double Clutch UK podcast, which I should have mentioned off the top. But take a look at those things, folks. But Nick, looking at the preview that you put together too, and obviously touching on the scoring difficulties that Iran had in Beijing, least efficient, like you had mentioned in your preview, at 0.80 points per possession. It increased a little bit in the 2019 FIBA World Cup. But again, 23rd place finish, and like you said, just lacking that bit of creativity that's going to help them, I think, in getting quality possessions and quality shots this tournament for sure. Moving on to, of course, then the U.S., and we know all about the U.S. Everyone knows all about the U.S. and the star power and the quality that they have. Playmaking galore. They were hit with a bit of, I guess, a COVID outbreak or COVID protocols prior to the tournament with of course, Bradley Beal having to withdraw from the squad, and then Kevin Love withdrawing as well. But yeah, just tremendous talent. Probably the most. They flew out, I think, with eight players, and then they had the most awkward plane ride probably in the history of plane rides with Devin Booker, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday to join up with the squad that flew out. They flew out on Friday. So. Yeah, just any other thoughts on the U.S. squad in terms of this tournament?
I think there's a few things you have to say about USA in any international tournament, particularly when they've brought a lot of the big names with them this time compared to, say, the Basketball World Cup where they didn't. They can outscore any team in this tournament. You can have lineups with like Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, and any number of another, let's put Chris Middleton in there, the way he just played in the finals. Sure. And the thing for me to watch is defensively and how easily guys adapt to their roles on this team, where you have a number of guys who I think have been brought in specifically for that reason, like Jeremy Grant, had an unbelievable season in Detroit. This team, they're not going to ask him to be a scorer. Draymond Green is rarely going to get to shoot the ball on this team. Adebayo is going to have to kind of adapt a little bit. And JaVale McGee, he's someone who knows his role. There's certain people who are either going to have to adapt or have been brought in specifically for that role. And the other thing to watch for is there's a lot of teams in this tournament in the latter stages that they could match up with, like Spain, for example, who have people who've played together for 30 plus years in some cases, where how quickly this team can gel and kind of find their roles within this setup is going to be crucial, because Argentina, Spain, there's a lot of teams in this tournament who've played together a lot. France, I'd even put in that bracket.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, if you're watching, you get in the comments, drop us a comment if you want, if you have a question or you just have something to say. You touched on it there. Like, I watched the tournament with that they just had in Las Vegas as well. And you could just see it, like you touched on, the cohesiveness, and particularly the defensive cohesiveness. And the U.S. struggled to find that in their first couple games, particularly against Nigeria, where they let Nigeria really hurt them in transition from the perimeter. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can come together, because like you said, it's not necessarily always the skilled team that wins. Certainly, you touched on the Czech Republic. I'm trying to erase it from my memory, but if we touch on the Czech Republic's win over Canada, the Czech Republic is a team that's played upwards of 20 games with each other this year. And Canada, 10 NBA players or 9 NBA players, including Anthony Bennett, the former number 1 pick and NBA player. You can't, it's not just necessarily about bringing all these stars together. And it's really, in any tournament sport, it's going to be the team that comes together and really gels and finds that niche amongst each other. So, so the USA, and again, like USA topping the group, I would think. I think you're on board with that for sure. All right.
Yeah. I think the only other interesting thing is how, and it's always interesting in any USA team they put together, how people who nearly always have the ball in their hands adapt to not having the ball in their hands. So you can imagine, let's speculate what the starting 5 is going to be. Probably Lillard, Levine, Tatum, Durant, and Adebayo maybe, or Draymond, one or the other. And so someone like Levine, who's just played a season in Chicago where he had free reign to shoot the ball every time he touched it, and he played incredibly well. But how is he going to react to, how is he going to make a difference in games when he's not shooting the ball every time down? That's the real test. Yeah,
you're right. And even, you touched on the starters there. I suspect that even with Pop, like, that might change depending on matchups, depending on who you start playing later in the tournament. So you're right, like, ego is affected as well. There's only one ball, like you said, and how are they going to adapt? For sure, it's a very good point. That brings us on to France, and you touched on, the tournament that they had in 2019, and the third place finish, third consecutive Olympics, 2-time silver medalists, and just another crop of tremendous players. Who stands out for you on the French team? Obviously, you touched on Rudy Gobert. Evan Fournier, we know all about, but who else stands out for you?
So if you're only an NBA fan and you're watching this France team, Nando De Colo is someone who, he is probably as important as anyone else on the French team. He's going to be their primary playmaker, him and Frank Ntilikina, who I'll be watching closely as a Knicks fan. Ntilikina is an interesting one because like a lot of players, he shows a lot more to his game when he plays for his country versus in the NBA. You see a lot more playmaking from Ntilikina and a lot more assertiveness offensively as well. Thomas Hertel is another one, big EuroLeague player who NBA fans might not be familiar with, but he's an incredible player. And then we have the kind of the guys everyone knows: Gobert, Fournier, Nick Batum, of course, incredibly rangy, and he's probably had just come off his best season almost since Portland in his career. So they have a lot of guys prime of their careers or slightly late in the case of Batum. But as we've talked about, they know each other. They've just had another international tournament where they actually beat the USA, albeit a undermanned USA team in comparison to this one at the Basketball World Cup. But we've seen them do it, and it will be no surprise when they're contending in this tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting fact that in your preview that I took away was, I didn't realize, was that France generated 45% of their possession out of the pick and roll in the 2016 games. And a big part of that, obviously, Tony Parker, who's not at this tournament. Do you see, like, how do you see France? What type of looks are they going to try to get? Are they going to want to get up and down? Are they more of a half court? Are they going to settle in and want to work in the half court, or are they going to try to get up and down in transition? I mean, you don't want to be running against a team like the States, obviously, because you're just not going to win that battle. I Are they going to try to generate, do you think, in the pick and roll again and try to
Very
spread the
much
floor?
so. They're definitely going to spread the floor. So what they normally have is 4 out with Gobert as the one inside, or maybe Poirier if he's off. Yeah. And they'll run pick and roll of that with 4 shooters, and be that Nando De Colo or Ntilikina. They'll run actions off that, and they always have 4 shooters. And the gravity of someone like Gobert hurtling to the hoop is impossible to ignore, because as we see in the NBA time and time again, he's just going to dunk. So the interesting thing about this team is actually, I don't think they're going to be outstanding in transition, because they're playing people like Batum on the wing who are a bit older. There's no outstanding transition finishes on this team. There's no if Gobert was Giannis, say, this might be a different conversation, but they don't really have anyone who's going to kind of dribble their way through an entire team and just dunk in transition. So they're more of a half-court team, but quite an open team off the pick and roll. Whatever they're reading, reacting off how defenses play against the pick and roll. If they play man, if they play zone, again, we know they've got the shooters to beat that easily. So, again, if you're an NBA fan, that's worth stressing. In this tournament, teams can and will sit in a zone a lot more than in the NBA.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. We'll head to the Czech Republic, and as much as it pains me to talk about the Czech Republic being at this tournament, it is the first tournament they've been at since the separation of Czechoslovakia. They finished 6th in the 2019 FIBA World Cup, and of course, we touched on it, beat Greece in the final of the qualifying tournament here in Victoria, British Columbia. And yeah, you touched on Tomáš Satoranský, hit that amazing turnaround over I think it was hit it over Lou Dort in that tournament. So
of all people as well.
Of all people, yeah. Just like, I mean, if you haven't seen the game, folks, it was the Czechs pretty much dominated the whole game. They shot the lights out from the perimeter. Canada battled back, and then the Czech went ahead in overtime on this amazing turnaround jumper off the glass, which broke Canadian hearts. But anyway, nonetheless, the Czech Republic heading to this tournament. What do we expect from the Czechs in this group?
They're a bit of a mystery. They are going to struggle just because of the group they're in. Tomáš Satoranský is incredible when he plays for his country. You think you've seen this guy. If you've watched him play in the NBA, watch him play for the Czech Republic, and you think it's a different guy. Jan Vesely as well. I mentioned him before, but he is the other guy who's going to put points up. I think they're going to struggle just in terms of overall talent on this roster. Yeah. But the other team worth mentioning in their qualifying group from the tournament that they qualified from is Turkey. So they qualified above Canada, Greece, and Turkey, which seems impossible on paper. Yeah. But the thing that stood out to me is that how they shot the ball almost at an unsustainable level in that tournament. And I think it's twofold in this tournament. A, I don't think they're going to create as good a looks in this tournament. And B, I don't think they're going to sustain that ridiculous shooting that we saw in that tournament. So, and if those shots stop falling, then we're going to really see how good this team is, because in that tournament, I don't feel like they were forced to any secondary action. They were just drive and kick, and they found open shooters. So, they're going to struggle, but they may. There's a very small chance they could surprise people, but it's unlikely.
The other thing too in that tournament to remember is, I think they certainly outsized Canada in that game. So you go up against the likes of Gobert with France and the size that the US has with bigs in terms of even Kevin Durant that can draw you out to the perimeter and just score on you in so many different ways. Get to the basket. It was just something that they didn't face in the qualifying tournament, I don't think. So I think you're right. I think that, when we talk about who's coming out of this group, we'll say US and France for sure. We'll move on to the next round. So I'll take a look at Group B. It includes the likes of Australia, Germany, Italy, and Nigeria. And I guess we will start with Australia. And of course, the the Australians, everything sort of goes through Australia through Patty Mills. We know that. Watched him again in that tournament with the U.S. in Las Vegas, but Patty Mills, Joe Ingles, just two of the more notable names. What else? When you look at what Australia likes to do, they like to. They're not afraid. They will score on you in multiple ways too. They can get at you in the half court set. They can get out in transition. They have shooters. Just good, pretty sound defensively as well. Like to turn defense into offense and get out and go. So what else stands out for you when you look at Australia, Nick? What do you see?
So I think with Australia, and I don't want to be overly negative because I think they're an incredible team.
Right.
But you can't ignore the fact they don't have Andrew Bogut coming into this tournament. He's been an absolute fulcrum for that country and their national program. And he was also just a crucial part of what they do offensively in terms of their ability to play inside, outside. He's always been an underrated passer out of the post, real defensive steal inside. So he is going to be a major loss. But they're one of the deeper teams in this tournament outside the USA. And they play with such poise and experience that... I don't doubt that they're going to overcome that anyway. I think you're going to see Aaron Baines step into that role a lot more.
Yeah.
There's also a few guys on this team who are kind of like, they either have been or are fringe NBA candidates, like Jock Landale, who's been rumored to be joining the NBA for the last few years. Dante Exum should be a fascinating watch because... I don't know about anyone else. I feel like I still haven't really seen what he can do in the NBA yet. And he's been there for years because he's struggled with injuries so much. But on his day, incredible transition player, really good athlete. We've talked about Patty Mills already, and he is the kind of heart and soul of this Australia team.
Yeah.
And he is also just so consistent with how he scores and shoots the ball. It will be no surprise when he's one of the top scorers and 3-point shooters in this tournament.
Yeah.
I actually see Australia winning this group quite comfortably, based on not necessarily talent, because I think there's some talented teams in this group, but the combination of talent, depth, experience, and prior results. I just can't imagine Australia not qualifying in this group.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think comfortably is a good word, as you put it. Certainly one of the tournament favorites. If you look at, we looked at it in regards to certainly the podium and probably the gold medal for sure. They're certainly one of the teams that could topple the US. Absolutely. Right. On to Germany, and Germany was one of the winners of the qualifying tournaments. So 6th appearance at the Olympics for Germany, first Olympic men's basketball appearance since 2008. Finished 18th at the FIBA World Cup, and they beat Croatia, as we touched on, in one of the Olympic qualifying tournaments. Couple NBA players in their team. What do you? I truthfully, I don't know too much about Germany. I haven't seen them play much. Have you seen much of them?
Germany are they're almost, no, I'm going to say it. They're one of the more interesting teams in this tournament. And the reason I say that is because, again, if you're NBA centric in how you watch basketball, you won't have seen many of these players before.
Yeah.
But they're incredibly good, a lot of these guys, in European basketball. And the way they play the game is incredibly balanced and hard to stop for that reason. Because they're not overly reliant on anyone. Again, like we did with Bogut, let's point out who's not here. Dennis Schroeder's not here, who is normally their kind of outstanding player and scorer. But guys they do have, and guys to watch out for. So Robin Benzing is their captain as they go through qualifying for FIBA tournaments. And he's kind of like, not in terms of overall ability, obviously, but in style of play, he's kind of Dirk Nowitzki light-ish in that he's a big guy, not the best athlete, but he can shoot the hell out of the ball, and it's hard to stop his release. So he kind of gets similar top of the key looks, and he can shoot the three. Johannes Voitman plays for CSKA Moscow, one of the biggest European teams in the EuroLeague. Incredible player. Danilo Bartel for Fenerbahce. Johannes Voitman is one to watch. He may pop up on the highlight reels. He actually, I was in Greece watching Germany play Greece in a World Cup qualifying game, and he threw down one of the best dunks I've ever seen in person. So do watch out for that. He can shoot the ball as well. Really kind of 3-level offensive player. So he's great. And we have NBA 2K, my team favorite, Isaac Bonga, who is another guy, like a 7-foot point guard, allegedly, that we haven't really seen show his stuff in the NBA yet, but obviously an incredibly talented player. But yeah, they're going to be fascinating to watch for that reason, because most of these guys we've never seen play against NBA level talent for the most part. So yeah, interesting to see.
Yeah, that is interesting storyline, like you said. Be interesting to see how they can maneuver their way through this tournament on this stage. Italy, again, another team that won one of the qualifying tournaments to get into the Olympics. 12th in the FIBA rankings, first Olympic men's basketball tournament since 2004, 2-time silver medalists. And I watched your podcast with your mate Gogo, and he touched on he's bang on with one of the more interesting storylines, and another player to watch out for, Nico Melli, Golden State Warriors, who played 12 minutes a game for them this past season, and you could just see him starting to grow in more confidence more and more as the season went on. It didn't make a major impact by any means in Golden State, but you could just see that, with his playmaking ability, he got to the rim well, he's a good shooter. His game really is tailor-made, I think, to the European game. And, he's been playing for Italy since he was 17 years old. It's when he made his debut with the senior team. He's another interesting player to watch in this group.
Yeah, and I think this Italian team, again, pointing out who's not there, Bellinelli and Gigi Tatome are two huge losses for this Italian team. But you've pointed out already, Nico Melli, high school phenom, the son of a US pro player in Italy who married a professional volleyball player. And his dad actually played against Kobe Bryant's dad professionally in Italy, which is an interesting side story. Gallinari is going to be the guy for this teim. We've seen what he can do for years in the NBA. Hard to stop his release. He's going to be the go-to guy. The other one to watch for Italy is Nicolo Melli, who is on the Pelicans roster, but playing behind Zion, you haven't really seen what he can do in the NBA. He's also shot the ball confusingly badly in the NBA, where he is actually a legitimate 3-point shooter and rim protector. So he's going to have a big role on this team. And the reason we talked about Nico Melli and his importance is linked to their style of play as well. Mayo Sacchetti, the coach, is a real kind of drive and dish style, free-flowing offense where it really favors offense over defense. And so Nico Melli's perfect for that role. And also his free-flowing ginger hair is going to stand out in the tournament. So yeah, exciting young player. And again, he plays behind a guy called Steph Curry in the NBA. So hasn't had a huge opportunity to shine, but that doesn't reflect his talent necessarily. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, you touched on the sort of drive and dish, and looking at the preview that you put together, a massive 40% of the shots that Italy has created within their half-court sets were catch and shoot jumpers. So that just kind of ties in hand in hand, doesn't it? The ability to get into break defenses down, get in the lane, draw defenders like you talked about, and then kick out for open looks. And it's going to come down to their ability, I guess, somewhat then, just to knock down those shots when they get those open opportunities, for sure. All right. So another player to keep an eye out for sure. Another storyline. And talking about interesting storylines brings us to Nigeria. Again, one of those teams, I think, that what they did right before this tournament has created a lot of buzz, drawn a lot of attention to themselves, has sort of upped their status a little bit in terms of the power rankings coming into this tournament. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, so Nigeria was at the tournament in Las Vegas and beat the United States and beat Argentina in their first two games at that tournament. It really was. They were terrific in the U.S. game. I watched that game, and like I said, they got up and down the floor well. They beat the U.S. From the perimeter defensively. They were sound. Of course, Precious Achura, if saying his name correctly, with the block on Kevin Garnett that kind of went viral. So they got the tandem there, or the three players from the Miami Heat. Mike Brown, obviously, the associate head coach from Golden State. Just a tremendous effort leading up to this tournament. Can they carry it over coming into this tournament is the big question.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of pressure on these guys now because it feels like the world of basketball has been waiting for an African nation to put together a kind of a solid enough generation of players where they'd actually be able to contend on the national stage. Because we've seen so many players come out of the African continent and be absolute world beaters in terms of talent, but never quite a whole crop where it's enough for a national team to contend outside of Africa. And that could be what we're seeing here with Nigeria. There's a huge amount of talent here, and it's been a bit of a theme in these teams we're talking about. But a lot of these guys are incredibly talented, but just haven't quite yet had the chance to show it at the NBA level. So we're talking about guys like Jordan Nwora, who is often their leading scorer, but has been busy winning an NBA championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. So he didn't even play in those exhibition games where they performed so well. But he's if you watched him at Louisville, he can really shoot the ball, really talented scorer. And the biggest thing about this Nigeria team is how well they shot the ball in those exhibition games. They were unstoppable. If you combine that with their kind of transition play and athleticism, that makes it a real tough team to beat. One of the most interesting players in this team for me is Jalil Okafor, who is someone who obviously went to your college team, Duke, and really highly sought after prospect, came into the league and did really well his first season, and seemed like he timed his career in the worst possible way in terms of his skill set, where he's like a really good post scorer, even at the NBA level, but that just became devalued immediately as he entered the NBA. So, but I actually think that skill set is more useful in FIBA basketball than it is in the NBA.
I was going to say that. You're absolutely right.
He could be a real threat for these guys. Obviously, we've got Josh Okogie, Precious Achua, as you mentioned, who, as soon as I saw that, not only did he get that block on Durant, but he posted it on his Instagram, and he left the comment that Kevin Durant, you're not that guy, which from a however old he is, 21, 22-year-old guy, I thought was absolute gold. Chimizi Mitu as well for the Kings. There's a lot of NBA talent on this team, and this is why looking at Germany, Italy, and Nigeria is probably I'm ruling Australia out because, as I said, I think they're going to qualify comfortably. Of the other three teams, I find it incredibly difficult to tell you who's going to qualify because they're probably evenly matched overall. Nigeria is the most talented, no doubt, but they're all young. They have no experience on this stage, and that matters. So it's really a question of how these guys pull together, because the qualification is theirs to lose. They're the most talented team outside of Australia in this group. And personally, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see them qualify from this group. But if I have to pick one, I'm going to pick my second nationality, which is Italy. And the reason I do that is because I do value what they did in qualifying. And what I mean by that is, like we talked about with the Czechs coming out of an incredibly difficult tournament, Italy actually beat Serbia in Belgrade in the final of their qualifying tournament, which really goes to show the character on that team and the togetherness. And seeing as they've just won the Euros, they won the Eurovision Song Contest. I'm going for more Italian glory by them coming out of the group. I may well be wrong here, as I've said, but I have to pick them.
I'm going to go. I agree with you. I think Australia is just a lock. So you put Australia in there as one of the teams, but I am going to go with Nigeria. I think that you touched on it, the athleticism, the length in this team. And I just think that even in that half court set, when Italy tries to get those drive and kick opportunities, that with the athleticism and the length of Nigeria, it might cause them problems in being able to rotate defensively and close out to shooters efficiently. And then, of course, the athleticism to be able to get out and score. I think that I'm going to take Australia and Nigeria in this group for me. Like you said, lots of storylines between those other three teams. So we'll have to see how it pans out. But so Australia and Italy for Nick, and Australia and Nigeria for me. And that brings us to the final group in this tournament, Group C. Argentina, the host Japan, Spain, defending FIBA World Cup champions 2019, Spain, and Slovenia. Well, we'll start with Argentina here, Nick. So they're ranked 4th in FIBA's rankings, silver medalist at the FIBA World Cup in 2019, 2004 and 2000 gold medalist in Athens, 2008 bronze medalist in Beijing. And the one storyline for me that I love from this Argentina squad is the 41-year-old Luis Scola, a player that we're well familiar with here in Canada. If you're a Toronto Raptors fan, the 41-year-old Luis Scola, and again, another viral pic. He looks like that guy at the Y. Like, there's a picture of him, sort of out there. He just still looks in incredible shape, but he's got the sort of the side gray hair, and he just looks like that old guy at the Y that in a pickup game that just maybe isn't as quick as he used to be, but he just gets into good spots, and he's got that one corner jumper, and he just gets to his spot and just keeps on making jumpers. So lots of experience in terms of Luis Scola. But what other storylines for you from the Argentina squad? Obviously not your traditional, not the same maybe powerhouse, if you will, in terms of what we're used to with other Argentina teams, but still that second place finish in 2019. What are you expecting from them in this tournament?
So firstly, just on Luis Scola, I think it has to be said, what a testament to his professionalism, that he's still able to perform at this level at his age. And if you've seen pictures of him recently, if you're watching this and you haven't seen pictures of him recently, please do go and look, because I swear he's actually like putting on muscle as he gets older as well, which is, unless he's seeing the same doctors Kobe was in Germany, or I don't know how he's doing that. The other storyline to watch here is there's a few guys who are going to be NBA players next season. Gabriel Deck is going to be playing in Oklahoma City next season. The guy I'm going to be watching closely is Luka Vildoza, playing for the Knicks next season. And the interesting story with him is Kobe Bryant was actually at the Basketball World Cup in China, and Luka Vildoza was a player he picked out individually as someone the Lakers should be trying to acquire, and if that's about as good as an endorsement gets in my eyes. So I'm going to watch him closely. The other guy who is kind of NBA level but don't know when we're going to see him is Leandro Bolmaro, who the Knicks drafted last year, had his rights traded to the Timberwolves. So when or if we're actually going to see him in the NBA, we don't know. But the thing to watch here is, so Spain's golden generation, and we'll get to them, are kind of half still playing. Argentina's, apart from Scola, is gone now. And it's really the challenges, the gauntlet is thrown down to the next generation to step up and live up to that, the Ginobilis and the Albertos, Delfinos, and those guys who were so magical in international basketball. Can they do it? We saw they did incredibly well in the Basketball World Cup. Argentina is one of those countries who always seems to contend. So I think it's impossible to. I think that they're definitely going to qualify in this group, in my eyes, with Spain. But how much further they can go is on this younger generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, referencing your review, nearly 20% of their possessions come in transition internationally in recent years. Is that still? You touched on the young players and that sort of young mindset. Is that going to be where they're going to want to score from? Is to get out in transition and get easy baskets, particularly with a young team at a international stage, really focus in on bunkering down defensively and being solid defensively, and then getting easy baskets in transition. Yeah,
I think there's certain things that run, even if you watch Argentina youth teams, there's certain things that run through their national program is kind of pride and combativeness defensively, where if you watch under 16, under 19, whatever age group you watch, you'll never see their teams kind of back down defensively from anyone. And that's a real something they really take pride in. And I think that goes hand in hand with then pushing the ball in transition, which again, you see throughout their national team setup. The third dimension to it is actually just what Luis Scola brings in. He is not going to be the guy running down the floor every single time, but he has such savvy and knowledge of how to play the game that if they do have to play half-court basketball, they're going to play it through him, through the high post, the low post, and go that way. So, they have a lot of ways of scoring, but defense and transition is definitely number one option in this team.
For sure. And that brings us to Japan, the host nation. Lowest ranked team, first Olympic men's basketball appearance since 1976. Went 0-5 at the FIBA World Cup. And of course, again, if you're in Canada, one of the notable players for them is Toronto Raptor Yuta Watanabe. What are we expecting from Japan in this tournament?
So I'm going to start this with an absence as well. They had a guy, kind of nationalized American for their national team called Nick Fazekas, who at the World Cup was their leading scorer. He's a 7-foot guy, just unbelievable shooter of the ball. And he is no longer with the national team, but still playing at 36. All credit to the guy. They've replaced him with a guy called Gavin Edwards, another nationalized American. He played 4 years at UConn, 2006-2010. He is an interesting player because he's going to be one of their top scorers. He's mainly an under-the-rim guy, which worried me a little bit when I first started watching him. But he's a real veteran player. He can shoot the ball. He's got huge shoulders, so he can go through contact. A really good player. He's one to watch. Obviously, the star for them, though, is Rui Hachimura for the Wizards, who improved a lot in his second year. I actually thought he was going to be better than he was in his rookie year. Took some time to adapt to the NBA. But now it seems like he's actually got a pretty well-rounded game. And the interesting thing for him as well is what he represents culturally for Japan as a kind of mixed ethnicity Japanese player in a country that hasn't had a huge amount of kind of diversity in its history. So it's a real kind of, and he is an absolute star in that country. He's a real phenom in popularity. So he'll be one of the biggest stars. He was their flag bearer. If you watch the opening ceremony, the male flag bearer. And so, in Japan itself, he's going to be one of the biggest stars, no doubt. But the real thing they're going to struggle with is it's hard to say in any other way other than they qualified as hosts. Otherwise, they wouldn't have qualified for this tournament. So they are really going to be up against it, playing against most of these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that brings us to just one of the world powerhouses, certainly a powerhouse in European basketball, Spain. So as we touched on, the reigning World Cup champions, 6 straight Olympic appearance in men's basketball, two-time silver medalists, won a bronze in 2016. And you touched on the golden generation of sort of Argentina and the fact that that transition has taken place, and rightly so. You mentioned that Spain is still, that golden generation is still hugely present, has their fingerprints all over this team. Things will go certainly through Ricky Rubio, the Gasol brothers. What are we expecting from Spain in this tournament? Certainly coming out of this group, I would say medal favorite, obviously.
Yeah, and I think just to reinforce your point, I'm going to read out some ages. Pau Gasol was 41 coming into this tournament.
Yeah.
Sergio Rodriguez, 35. Rudy Fernandez is 36. Marc Gasol is 36. Rubio, who is actually the MVP of the FIBA Basketball World Cup, is 30. So for most of these guys, this is one last hurrah for the golden generation. I find that's one of the most compelling stories in this tournament for me, actually. Seeing these guys go out off the back of a Basketball World Cup win, seeing if they can win one more to kind of sign off their international careers. Other notable players, Willy Hernan-Gomez is a really good player. Sergio Llull for Real Madrid is an unbelievable guard. But yeah, again, they're going to qualify easily for this group. They're going to get out of the group stage in first gear because they're just their chemistry is that high. They have everything you need on the team. They have depth. They have everything in their roster. So almost just based on age, health might be their biggest concern. If either of the Gasols are injured, for example, then all of a sudden that team is a whole lot smaller.
Yeah, and certainly with the amount of games and it, in such a short amount of time in tournament basketball, age is certainly a factor to keep an eye on for this team. But I agree with you; they're just so much, and this group has played so much together that there's just so much cohesiveness and talent all over this roster that they're just going to be a treat to watch for sure.
Yeah, I think decision making is probably the biggest attribute of this team from the start to the end of the roster, in that whichever five they put out, and that is a real kind of style of Spanish basketball, is that you never see bad decisions on the court. You have someone like Rubio, who's an absolute maestro running the offense, and then you bring him out and it's a Sergio Rodriguez. And then again, you've got two incredible passers and decision makers in the Gasols at top. So yeah, they're not going to turn the ball over at all, basically. And they could just kind of out decision make other teams to a goal. You just don't know.
And defensively as well, Marc Gasol's perimeter defense is terrific. His ability to show on high screens, even at his age, I mean, it's just tremendous. So they're so sound in so many areas, and that's what breeds success for them, is, like you touched on, very minimal mistakes, efficient on both ends of the floor, and it's really been a winning recipe for them for sure. Anyway, the final team in Group C, and again another team that qualified through winning the qualifying tournament, Slovenia. And again, I watched your podcast where another storyline that Gogo had touched on was with the ability of Slovenia to take a star in Luka Doncic and build a team around him and put everybody into a system where they can be successful. And I thought that was a really, really good point, where it just showed, what they were able to do in building that system. And we know what Doncic can do, but to be able to put players around him that, are just going to be able to feed him and just, create such a terrific environment for him to foster, for him to flourish. Is Slovenia is it really going to be between Slovenia and Argentina in this group to get out, do you think?
It will take a superhuman effort from Luka Doncic to get this team out. And the thing is, I wouldn't put it past him. He's that good. Yeah. But even to get out of the group, I think it will require, and again, we've seen it even in the NBA, that he puts up these absurd numbers. Yeah. And it's actually going to be quite similar. If you've watched many Mavs games this year, it's actually going to be quite similar. Luka dominates every single possession. Yeah. The secondary interesting player to watch on this team, though, is Mike Toby, a naturalized American again. He's a 7-foot guy born in New York. And I hadn't seen much of him before, but watching Slovenia, I actually really like his game. He's a genuine 7-footer who is equally effective rolling to the rim or kind of popping out to three, which is a kind of perfect partner for Luka Doncic, who they're essentially going to run pick and roll basically every time down the floor. And Luka either scores or dumps it off for an assist. And yeah, he is going to be the second scorer for this team, I would put money on. And so, yeah, it really does all rest on Luka's shoulders, though, through the style of play, which is similar to Dallas in that because he controls every possession, the whole team's fate is on his shoulders. But he is good enough to get out of the group. So I'd be surprised if they went further than that, if they did qualify. But we saw it with a Germany-led Dirk Nowitzki once in an international tournament where he kind of single-handedly won a tournament. So, yeah, we'll see. It could be one of the kind of big chapters in Luka's career.
For sure. And first ever Olympic appearance since the separation of Yugoslavia for Slovenia. Reigning Euro basketball champions, as we touched on, qualified by winning one of the 4 qualifying tournaments. Just you touched on it there with the amount of touches that Luka's going to get, and thereby the amount of attempts. You just wonder if, once they start running into the likes of a Spain, a very sound defensive unit that's going to be able to put in schemes to get the ball out of his hands more and to make it really, really difficult for him, whether it's, coming at him with hard double teams or whatever it is, things might get a little more difficult for him. So it will be interesting to see how he does and how he adapts. But like you said, we've seen that same thing in the NBA where he's just able to put up ridiculous numbers against all types of defensive schemes. So
yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that Eurobasket winning team, and the thing that made that team so unstoppable in that tournament was that his backcourt partner in that tournament was Goran Dragic, who was X number of years younger at that point and was also having a tournament for the ages. So the fact that they had 2 unstoppable pick and roll players on that same team, and Zoran Dragic, Goran's younger brother, is on this roster, but Goran is not on this team, which is a incredible. As much as Luka's improved, having that secondary playmaker as good as Goran Dragic or not having that guy in this tournament is puts a big ceiling on how far they can go, in my mind.
All good stuff. That has absolutely flown by. I've been on for just over 50 minutes now, and hopefully everybody has enjoyed that. Nick, thank you so much for joining us and bringing your wisdom and your knowledge of basketball to the channel. Really appreciate
Absolute
it.
pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Before you go, I think the last bit of this podcast would be medals. So who's going to win gold? Who's going to win silver? And who's going to win bronze?
Gold, USA. I can't overlook them. There's just too much talent on that team. I think Kevin Durant will be the best player in the tournament. Silver, I'm going to go for Australia. And bronze, I will go for, it's either France or Spain in my mind, but I'm going to go for France.
Ooh, I'm going to go US for the golds. I'm going to go Australia for the silver. I'm going to go Spain for the silver. And I'm going to go Australia for the bronze as my 3. We will see how it plays out. Don't forget, folks, we do have our NBA draft special coming up on this channel as well. Follow us on Twitter. Nick, did you want to give a shout out to your Twitter handle and to your podcast? What do you guys have coming up?
If you want to listen to my general basketball nonsense, I'm at NJ Whitfield on Twitter. And do check us out at the Double Clutch podcast. We're a team of UK, not just NBA, but all over basketball fans, which you can find at Double Clutch UK.
Yeah, and like I said, folks, the link to the Double Clutch Twitter handle is in the description of the video. Make sure you check them out. Subscribe to their channel. Do consider subscribing to our channel as well if you like the content. Give us a like and a share. Hit the notification bell to get notified when we go live. All our new content. And we will see you soon.